has been much discussion about safety in the City of Edmonton leading up to this election. In February, within Ritchie's boundaries, a Muslim woman was attacked and faced death threats while crossing the street. As a councillor, what would you do to improve safety and the lives of racialized Edmontonians?
Absolutely. As your Edmonton Public School trustee and as an elected official on the south side of Edmonton the last 11 years, I've been acutely aware of these instances of hate and racism and growing concern. I've worked to strengthen the anti-racism initiatives at Edmonton Public Schools. I've worked with our student, staff, and families to help bring in meaningful policy changes that can create a more welcoming community. And I would bring that same energy to City Hall, and that's something that I have experience doing previously. I think it's important to remember that many of the challenges affecting all of us are exacerbated for racialized Edmontonians and those facing the most barriers. The last 5 years I've worked at Big Brothers Big Sisters, and whether we're talking about issues and barriers for our young people, or whether we're talking about the fear that some face on transit or in the community, as you spoke about, I think it's important that we can build a community that all of us can feel safe. And I have previous experience when I worked at the Edmonton Federation of Community Leagues, working with Neighborhood Watch and other community groups and trying to deal with safety and help more people feel safe in their community. It's important to recognize that we need to get to the root causes of crime and to take a smart on crime approach. That means dealing with addiction as a public health issue, not a criminal issue. It means dealing with and supporting our unhoused neighbors through permanent supportive housing and other long-term interventions that we know works. It means looking at things like harm reduction and safe consumption sites, and it also means making sure that taking care of some of the basics, like making sure that our streets are safe, whether you're 8 years old or 80 years old, to walk down and to enjoy. I've had this conversation with my wife. She is a petite Asian woman. She sometimes does not feel safe taking the LRT where I do, and so we need to make sure that we're building a transit system that is welcoming and feels safe to everyone. And so that's something that we need to think about, and we need to broaden our lens.
Well, there's quite a few things we need to get on top of right away. First, we have to start making our communities and community leagues and rec centers multicultural, inviting marginalized communities into them. So we have a rec center, say Terwillegar or the Meadows. We don't have daycares in there. We don't have multicultural programs. We don't have seniors programs. We don't have accessibility programs. We don't have child intervention programs. That needs to be more of a community hub. I keep seeing, cultural communities having their meetings in the basements of churches. Out of the way, out of sight. I want them front and center. I want us to invite them and have them join our community. We need more tolerance, and the only way to develop tolerance is through knowledge. So when it comes to the marginalized communities and how we're going to get them involved in the city, we have this crime prevention and community connection program in Aspen Gardens that we developed after a horrific crime in 2008. The neighborhood wanted to develop a vigilante-style project, and I knew that wasn't going to work. That just pits neighbors against each other. Hate makes hate. We needed to become more loving and inclusive. So instead, we developed a program where neighbors got to know each other. The neighbors around them got to know each other quite closely. And by doing that, they develop a connection that unites them as opposed to divides them. That community connection program also helped us lower crime rates. The crime rate in Aspen Gardens has remained low since 2008. Because of our crime prevention program. And we have to ensure that neighbors know how to prevent crimes within their neighborhoods so that it is a safer place for everyone. When you connect your neighbors, they know each other. They know the marginalized communities. They know their neighbors, and they are friends with their neighbors. You don't have to be, having everybody over for supper every night, but what you do have to notice is that when you see somebody walking down the street and they don't seem to be feeling safe, you can spot that a mile away. Connection makes people safer.
And that's That's a tough question because I think that there's a lot of concern or I guess dispute about how best to approach it, and policing is important, but I think that we need to go beyond just policing and try and find ways to actually address the problems. So with regards to the problems of Muslim women being attacked within Edmonton, that's a cultural issue, and dealing with that, I think, is a long-term solution. We need to find ways to, bring in possibly anti-racist training within not just the city employees and anyone who's actually employed by the city. I think that's important, and that should be an annual thing. But I think we can even start looking at our Green Shack programs and the programs offered to children through the EPL, and start trying to bring in this anti-racist lens at a young age, so the next generation is growing up and understands how to be an anti-racist, not just I'm not racist, because that's, I think, a problem that our society in North America here, especially, I guess in the Western world, has really not understood, that it's not just a matter of being not racist. We've got to be anti-racist. And then beyond that too, I think with policing, there needs to be some racialized data within what they collect, and I think that budget increases should be tied to that. I think it's important that our police is well funded, but there needs to be some change there instead of us just handing over money.
Yeah, for me, as a Muslim, my whole family's Muslim too. This is a concern that's not new to me. This is the concern that my mother and my sister have when they decide on how to go for a walk in their community. They see what's happening in this city, and it's a massive issue. And we need to strengthen hate crime laws. I've spoken about this numerous different times. I believe firmly that hate crime laws to date are unacceptable. They do not protect people, and they protect harassers, and we need to change that. So what I would do if I'm elected is that, first off, I would work with city council to actually write a letter to the federal government to actually push them to get something done. Because at the end of the day, this is an emergency that's happening in Edmonton. Not an emergency, it's a crisis that's happening in Edmonton of Muslim women, especially Black women, not feeling safe to go walk outside their house, which is completely unacceptable. Everyone deserves to be able to walk outside their house. I firmly believe that. I also too, I want to work with EPS too, because I was heavily, I do to some of the people that were attacked. One of them actually does, and I don't know the lady that lives in Ritchie, but I do know one that ended up living in Royal Gardens. And I actually sat down and I talked to her, and she told me that she felt belittled by the police, which is another huge issue that we have here. Is that, and I firmly believe, and I've said this, is that systemic racism is apparent throughout EPS, and it's a system that is rigged against people that look like me. So what we need to do is that we need to have city council, we need to find a way to make sure that EPS is breaking down these systemic barriers, and we're creating a police force that people feel comfortable going to, because numerous different public leaders, including Sharif Haji, including Jabril Ibrahim, have said numerous different times, Muslim women do not feel safe going to the police, and that is a systemic problem. That is something that's not going to be fixed overnight, but it's something that city council has to take seriously, and we have to do something about it.
It's all Edmontonians. I don't know if you saw, but I was also the victim of an assault just a couple of weeks ago. So we need to really, I think we need to get the police out of their cars, back to community policing, allowing that relationship to formulate, and their presence to be felt as well. I know that there's a lot of talk of defunding the police, which I do not stand behind. I do believe that social agencies need to integrate with police, but I don't believe the money needs to come out of the police budget. I think if we can allow the social agencies to work alongside the officers that we already have and not reduce the numbers of the officers, I think that will go a long way towards helping Edmontonians, as well as allowing officers to formulate those relationships, be it through beat walking or biking, just allowing them to be there and be a part of the community as well.
This is a huge issue, and we're seeing during the federal election now also, I'm talking to frontline healthcare workers who are having to cross the lines of abusive folks at the hospitals. I mean, there is a sense of impunity amongst a lot of people in terms of how they can treat others. So there's a few different levels we need to do this at. First of all, we need to take seriously the requests and actions of communities that are most affected. If they're saying you need to do this, then we need to figure out how to do that. People who have the lived experience know best what it is that they need in order to help us all work together. That being said, it's not up to them to have to do all of the heavy lifting. We need leadership on this. So one of the things I have in my platform is the goal of making sure that I want every city staff to receive bystander training, for example. Because often what happens is even if there are others around, they don't know what to do and they get paralyzed. And that's a normal reaction, but there are some really simple strategies people can use to intervene and intervene safely, not putting themselves necessarily in jeopardy, not necessarily creating a direct conflict. So that's one piece. I think we need to be looking at the Safer for All task force report recommendations and moving on those very, very quickly because they did the homework. They also operated within a frame of what can the city actually feasibly do? And people sometimes criticize them for not going far enough. And at the same time, it's that's the minimum. That's the starting place for what we need to be doing in the next year.